Jason Layton, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. I don't remember where I heard about you or how I got your contact info, but that's not important. Important thing is that you're a guest on my show, and everything happens for a reason. And I'm sure you were, no, well, there's no question you were worthy enough to be a guest on my show. So, without further ado, I'd like you to tell your life story regarding what you do, what you experienced. Go over everything in that bio, and I'll cover we cover it all in great detail afterwards. I got a little notepad handy too to jot down anything you say that I feel is worth elaborating on. So you've got the floor. Take as long as you need to tell us what you experienced from a primary source perspective that causes you to realize the stuff that you want to do is not fraudulent, it's not fake, it's not quack science or anything like that. It's for real, and why you wanted to continue with it. You got the floor, and I'll be on mute. I
Yeah.
won't interrupt you as you're talking.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you and everyone listening. So my name is Jason Layton. I am a metaphysicist, hypnotherapist, and a spiritual coach. My journey started when I was about 16. My mother was part of a group who had a person who did channeling, and about 12 to 13 people gathered every week to listen to channel information. And my mother invited me to go. I guess I was 17 years old, and I fell in love with channeling. I was just so in awe of the experience. So I did that. I attended the classes every week, and then around the age 21, I started doing channeling myself, and then I became the main channel of the group, and then we expanded out to 2 days. It was amazing. I was able to channel my heart for an hour to an hour and a half, 2 days a week, to about 30, 35 people every week. It was an amazing experience. And then I left channeling, uh, or the idea of what channeling is, sitting in front of a group, turning myself off and letting information flow through me. Because I felt like after I was listening to the information after the fact, like after I was channeling and listening to my own information, I was like, you know what? I'm not living that 100%. So I felt like it was kind of false information because I wasn't living it, and yet I was speaking this information through me. So at that point, I said, I'm not going to channel that way anymore. I'm going to work on channeling continuously where I don't turn it off. So it's not about sitting down and getting silent and letting this information flow through you. My idea was to allow this information to always flow through me. And so that led me on an amazing journey for about 25 years, researching, diving into my dreams, into channelings on my own. And I created a course called The Soul's Dream, and it's my understanding of the reality that we live in. So I break it down from a very basic understanding how we are all energy into a very highly advanced understanding of where we are, what we're in, and where we're headed, and understanding the whole matrix, the whole construct of the stars all the way down to the tiny little cells inside of our body, which has brought me to the idea about understanding that we are not a human being, right? We have the identity of a human being, but who we are is far greater than a human being. The human being is the experience that we create with inside of this matrix, but we are an eternal being. We all have a human being, but we are not the human being. We are the experiencer of the human being. We are the consciousness, the awareness, in which gives the human being the life to have the experience. So diving down that brought me into what is it that controls the human? And that brought me into the understanding that we have 50 trillion cells inside of our body. And each cell has its own awareness, its own job, its own consciousness. And that each cell is part of the whole, and the whole is the human being. And that the government of these cells is the mind. And it's through the mind that we can control our bodies beyond anything that we've been perceiving in the last 100, 200 years. There is so much more that we can do with our bodies that we're not doing today. For instance, when you look at all these people talking about the information coming in from the 5G networks, we're talking about vibrational frequencies. Now, if we hold to the idea that these frequencies are going to harm us, we are then giving permission for those vibrational frequencies to harm us. But when you understand that we are energy and that our bodies are filled with energy, right? So if you look at one single cell out of the 50 trillion cells inside of our body, each cell holds 1.4 volts. Now, 1.4 volts is not a lot of energy, but when you put them all together, that's 70 trillion volts. So when we talk about chi and prana, we are filled with so much energy. And when we direct it with mindfulness, with intention, and with your attention, we can easily transcend any negative vibrational frequency that's coming from the external environment once we understand what this internal environment is. The internal environment is pure energy, and it's shaped by our awareness, by our consciousness. So it's all about now taking back our power, taking back our ability to manifest not only an external reality of things, but of our internal reality of our bodies. And really working with our bodies to first heal ourselves. Once we heal ourselves, then we can move into the next phase, which we can expand ourselves and we can tone and grow our muscles to any way we want to grow them. And then once we master ourselves, then we should start looking into the external world. Whereas today's point of view, everybody's looking external and they're forgetting about the temple that houses the experience, the human. So I feel today it's so important to meditate, right? When you look at meditation, meditation means middle. It means being present in all that you do. It's not just about going down and laying down on the grass and zoning out into the ethers for 15, 20 minutes. No, it's about being present all the time, watching the words that come through your mind and choosing the ones that are of the highest vibration. Because remember, we have 86,000 thoughts a day, and it's up for each one of us to choose what thought we want to experience, what we want to express into this reality. And how we do that is bringing into thought. So we have chakra systems, right? We have 7 major chakras. Our top 3 are intellectual, our bottom 3 are emotional, and the heart in the center is our feeling. So we have all these thoughts running through our top chakra. Then we attach an emotion to that chakra, which gives it energy. And then it becomes a feeling, and then we express it into the world of form. So it's up to us to really be the gatekeeper of where we want to direct our attention. And this has been the project of the elite to kind of take the attention of the individual, of the human being, and guide it to a reality that they desire. Because once they have the masses looking in a specific direction, giving all their attention to a specific direction, guess what? That's what's going to manifest. Because the power isn't in the external world, the power is in you, the beholder of the experience. What you believe to be true is your truth through your own expression and experience of your own thoughts. So if I was to say, you don't look good in that dress, well, if you believe what I just said, you will then change your physiology. Everything inside you will be like, oh, I don't look good in the dress, I'm going to get changed. But if you believe you look good in that dress, you can say, hey, I look fantastic in this dress and I feel so good. So what's happening is your thoughts are matching your emotions, which is creating your reality. So that's a little bit about what I do and where I am today. And
Thank you very much. I guess I'll start with, well, first of all, these questions that you have, plus for the answers to the age-old questions, who are we and where do we come from? Now, the simple answer is who are we? I guess infinite consciousness is the short answer to that. The where do we come from is not so not so set in stone. I guess I'll give you a quick rundown of everything that my research suggests. I'll make it short, sweet, and to the point, and uh, and then you can have your take on how this all what that all means to you. Well, first of all, where do humans come from? The star system of Lyra seems to be the general consensus among those in the contactee community, the ancient astronaut theory community, and well, had an article that I once critiqued called "Characteristics of ET Races." Interestingly, the Lyra star system on that article was the one that seemed to have the most different ET races in it, which would make sense if you believe that humans are genetic royalty and have the genetics of many different types of ET races, which is said to be the reason as to why so many ETs are visiting Earth. Makes sense that Lyra would have so many different races in it. And also, in more modern times, it has been my understanding that Zecharia Sitchin's books are very accurate. His first three books, in particular, I should say, his fourth book onward are kind of questionable because I reason to believe from that point he was kind of compromised as the powers that be saw him as a threat to expose humans' hidden past. But his first three books are said to be accurate, and that everything that goes with it, including the fact that humans were genetically engineered by Anunnaki extraterrestrials, Homo erectus DNA plus Anunnaki DNA, and well, that's in more modern times, but that doesn't change or hinder the fact that we were still genetic royalty. I guess even before then, coming from the Lyra system. And as far as how humans came here and got to Earth, I think the whole Orion Wars legend. I was talking about that with my last guest, Lauren Pritchard. She knows a lot about the Orion Wars and what Star Wars is a parody of in some sense. And it's been said that the races came to Earth to, among other things, avoid draconian invasion, among other things. But that's in recent times. There's long history before then. But that seems to be where do we come from? Lyra and Sitchin's stuff being accurate. I said I'd keep it short, sweet, and to the point, so I'm not going to say any further. Do you have anything to say about those stories regarding our extraterrestrial connections at the very least?
Um, well, I take a little bit of a different spin on it when it comes to that. Because what I look at is the source, right? So when we talk about the form, the human form, it has been genetically modified and it has been manipulated for the experience, but the source is the core essence of the being, right? So where we come from is pure awareness, is pure consciousness. And then we transcend down through different dimensions of space-time and have different experiences. So when you talk about, ET races, I don't believe personally that there is a physical place when we look into the stars. What I think, in my experience, is that these stars that we're looking at are energy portals, and that we can't get into a ship and fly to these places because what we're in, when you look at science today, we're looking at waves of energy. Really, the Newtonian reality is kind of falling apart. And we're looking more into an energetic reality where everything is energy and that each moment we're forming our reality through our consciousness. So the blueprint of the human being, yes, has changed over time to give the experience. So when you look at the precession of the equinox or the great year, the 26,000 year journey into this reality, into this realm, into this matrix, and the purpose for that is to master vibration, because this is one verse in the multiverse, and this verse is about energy vibration. Vibration is oscillation. It's about dualistic expression, good, bad, right, wrong, and everything in between. So we come down, we come into a very high state of awareness. We come into this thing called the golden age. And then we transcend down into denser states of consciousness. And as we're transcending down, they would say that you go from the golden age to the silver age to the iron, or the bronze, and then to the iron. And what they're talking about is density in consciousness. So as we get more dense in consciousness, our bodies become more physical. So when we look at the manipulation, all that's done all by design to give the experience for that soul's growth in the understanding of mastering vibration. So we have many lives here as female, male, different ethnicities. I mean, everything you can think of within this reality, we come in here to experience what that vibrational frequencies can do for our soul's growth. So when we look at, different star systems, yes, they exist, but not on this dimension. It's a different dimension, and how we get there is through these star portals. And each one of these stars, if you take a P900 Nikon camera and look at the star, you'll see a spinning vortex of energy and a vibration. And you can actually measure the vibrational frequency of that star. And when you look at all the stars in the sky, when you're out west, you can see all these stars. They're all projecting vibrational frequencies into this realm to hold the collective consciousness into a specific experience. So we say we're moving into the age of Aquarius, right? We're just coming out of Piscean experiences as a collective consciousness. The age of Aquarius is now going to move us into this amazing technology phase. But what it's doing is it's bringing us back into remembering our connection to the past, because we already had this, like, all this technology that we're coming into now. We've had that. I mean, in the golden age, we didn't need actually other materials to get somewhere. We would it's through our consciousness that we could move. I mean, you see these, say the aliens today, they're moving in spaceships because they're at a certain density, right? So they'd be at a fourth, fifth dimensional density. When you get into the sixth and seventh dimension, you don't need spaceships to move around. You can just change your consciousness and move in and out of different time spaces. But this reality that we're in today, this vibrational frequency, is called the Aquarian experience. And collectively, we're all in it, and we're all starting to wake up, right? So 2012 was the marker point of the awakening. So we have been descending in consciousness from the golden age to the silver, to the bronze, into the iron. The iron was the darkest ages of human collective consciousness experiences. And now we are now ascending. In 2012 was the marker point. Now we're going to start ascending from the bronze age into the silver, and then back into the gold, where we're going to remember why we took this amazing journey. And it's so fun. It's so fun to see the awakening starting to happen and all this stuff coming out.
Okay, since you mentioned 2012, I told you my common username that I use for a lot of the things I use is fan of 2012, because I was a little bit of a nut about that. And you said you're a fan of 2012 too, and you kind of made that clear. I guess a lot. It's just to take up some radio conversation. I'll give you my understanding of what happened in 2012, and then I'll give you the chance to agree, disagree, or, well, say whatever you want about it. A couple stories about what happened on December 21st, 2012 from a couple different sources. Tolak, Andromeda Console contactee, he said his ET contact said that was the day that when the alignment happened between the Earth, Sun, and the center of the Milky Way galaxy on winter solstice, the Earth's core blossomed, for lack of a better word, from a 3D star entity into a 4D star entity. It's not an iron core like mainstream science says. It's more of a star core, if you will, inside a planet. And it blossomed into a 4D Earth, and over the course of time, Earth would transition into 4D consciousness. And Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartz said that was the day we all experienced universal dream time for the first time ever, where our consciousness basically got to go through a temporary ascension period to decide whether or not we're going to try to further our ascension into the future, or be sheeple and couch potatoes and not really want to care about that stuff. And ever since then, that type of universal dream time has happened on, I believe he said, equinoxes, solstices, and total eclipses. Not sure about partial eclipses. And also, last but not least, Jim Self. When I asked him about those two things, he said, well, they're both right, but I think Tolex maybe is not as basic as he's asserting, that it's only dealing with the core of the Earth. And Jim Self asserted that Metatron, the Archangel, came in on that day, and he actually gave a trio of dates, 11/11/11, 12/12/12, and 12/21/2012, as three hotspot dates leading up to 2012, where Metatron would assert that everything that happened from 2012, December 21st, 2012 onward, would be happening in a fourth dimensional construct where time really does not exist, 4D is the reality. We still perceive it as 3D because we're so accustomed to it and been accustomed to it for a long time. But the fact that that's what our consciousness shows does not mean that that's what it actually technically is. And he asserts that Metatron has asserted that it would be technically 4D from that day onward, and eventually 5D, I guess, at some point. So that's what they said happened on 2012. They, meaning the source I gave. What, any
Yeah.
agreement, disagreement, or anything else you want to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I mean, the alignment was definitely there, and it was the awakening process. As for the core of the Earth, when we're talking about the Earth itself, it's still a Newtonian reality. We're still looking at it as a physical thing. It's not a physical thing. Our bodies aren't physical things. Physical things are the old paradigm. It's like you were saying, we're kind of stuck in this 3D reality because of our associations of the familiarness of how long we've been here for. But it's really not solid. The Earth isn't solid, and our bodies are not solid. And what's happening is, yes, the vibrational frequency has shifted at that point into the ascension process. And the ascension process isn't just a very short thing. It's the ascension process from the descension. It's 12,000 years down, or 12,500 years down, and 12,500 years up. So we're in the ascension process now, completely going in it. And the cabal and these people who are looking to hold back the consciousness, they're put there in place to challenge you. Because what happens is you can't get out unless you take full responsibility and you do the work yourself, where you put in the meditations every day, where you guide your mind, where you take control of what you're putting in your mind, and what you put in is what you're going to give out. So all these things that are happening on the external world that's around us, it's all put there in place to challenge us to move from the old paradigm into the new paradigm. Because in truth, I mean, you are an eternal being. You can't die. There is no death for an eternal being. The human body will definitely transition from one phase to another. That's where we get our karmic ties from. But there is really no death. So when we look at all these things that are happening, they're just for the experience for the soul's growth. And there is a program put in place called like the Illuminati, or the ones who are holding down the old paradigm, and they're not going to let go. I mean, it's their job to hold and suppress everyone, because it's everybody's job to do their own work. No one's going to come in here and do it for us. No, no hired being, no aliens. You have to do the work yourself every single day. And once people start taking responsibility of that, that's when the shift really happens internally. And we can shift from where we're at now to a fifth dimensional reality, 100%, but it wouldn't be familiar. So it's going to take some time to unwind all the old programming from our past descension.
Yeah, you say the powers that be aren't going to let go. It kind of always raises a question. Well, how much longer do we have to wait before we're free? Now, it's been asserted by some that 2024 is a very prominent year when it comes to the endpoint of the control system on Earth. The eclipse that's supposed to cross over the United States, April 8th, 2024, is, among other things, said to signify the end of the Roman Empire of the modern era that is the United States, which, if we're lucky, can signal the end of the control system. And well, the big question is, if the control system really does end around that date, to what extent is humanity going to be willing to fix the damage that was caused by it? Are we just going to sit around and be apathetic, or are we going to actually say, okay, it's time to transition this world into a world that has will eventually look like a world that never had a control system? So I know we shouldn't really talk about time because it's an illusion, but do you agree or disagree with 2024 being potentially a date when Roman Empire, the modern era that is America, is gone, and the control system will really not have to be worth worrying about anymore?
I would say, who cares? I would say you individually start today. Because once you shift your reality, everything around you changes. What we're talking about here is a date in the future, right? So we're still talking about a physical thing, an experience that's going to come where oligarchy is going to break down and we're going to be left with these ruins that we have to rebuild up. No, once we start changing today, our energetic fields within inside of us, everything around us changes. Our whole entire reality changes based on your own perception. This is just a one-man job. This isn't going to be, the whole collective is going to ascend at once. No, each individual has their own things they have to work out. And if people really are serious about making the shift, take the time every single day to program yourself to the things that you desire, not the things that you don't desire. Because if we keep on waiting for dates, I mean, there were so many times when I first got into my growth and it was like, these dates are coming, these dates are coming. These dates are markers of energetic vortex fields. When you're talking about the eclipse, right? The eclipse is an energy that the whole collective is feeling. The full moon is an energy that who is ever experiencing the full moon is going to have a heightened emotional state. We're talking about an energetic field. So when we're talking about all these things happening in these alignments in the stars, we're talking about energy. And we can start using the energy today. We don't have to wait tomorrow or the next day or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We can all start today to change our lives to the lives that we want to live today. Because we are already in the ascension. It's not coming. It's already happening now. And 2012 was that marker of that alignment for that energy to be here for all of us to tap into if we're conscious enough to tap into it. So I would say yes and no to your question. I would say yes, that's a good marker, but I would say no, we can all start today. We don't have to wait.
All right, getting back to something that you mentioned earlier about the stars being vortexes of sorts. Uh, well, it is been said by some that I don't know if, well, if you were to actually hypothetically take a rocket ship and travel all the way to those stars, you would see, for all intents and purposes, something that looks like our sun or another version of that. It has been said, though, that the nuclear fusion theory for stars is bullcrap. That is a mainstream science humongous lie. But the nature of what stars really are is it's kind of debatable. Some say electricity strictly. Some say a combination of electricity and mostly electricity and a little bit of magnetism. And others have said it's electricity, magnetism, and scalar energy too. And well, no really consensus agreement on the percentage of those things, what it really is, but there's a lot to show nuclear fusion is bullcrap. And the Thunderbolts Project YouTube channel, founded by David Talbot, who wrote the Saturn Myth, has done a fascinating job showing a lot of videos pushing the electric universe hypothesis. Definitely recommend people subscribe to it and watch some of the videos on there. So when you hear this, that nuclear fusion is bullcrap, the stars are either electricity, magnetism, and or scalar energy. Do you agree or disagree with that? How does that tie into stars actually being some sort of a vortex, as you assert?
Yeah, so um, first I want to start off by saying that, again, we have just come out of the descension process. Descension is deception. We have been deceived for quite some time now, and especially just coming out of the Iron Age when the Roman Empire was in full range. I mean, it was all about deception. So when you look at NASA, NASA is deceiving. It's and you look at all these theories that are coming out, they're all theories. They're not proven. I mean, and there's really no good images of these stars from NASA. I mean, it's all CGI. So, I mean, when it comes to from the scientific model that we've been brainwashed with, indoctrinated into, taught, it doesn't really, it's going to fall apart pretty quickly. But yes, the stars are definitely energy vortexes, magnetics. It's all tied into it. And when you understand what's holding all these particles around us into place, it's the stars. The stars are the mechanism in which holds the matrix for us to have a collective experience inside of. And that's why all of our ancestors were so keen in understanding how the stars worked and what they were. That's why you have all these ancient pyramids all around the world. What they were doing is they were tuning these pyramids to the stars. So when you have, like, when you see the Great Pyramids and you see Sirius aligning for the King's Chamber and Orion at certain times of the year, they were pulling in that energy and they were seeding it into these big, gigantic, megalithic energy devices. They're not just rocks, right? I mean, if you look at what the temples are made out of, what are they made out of? Silicon, right? It wasn't too long ago, all our computers were made in communicating with the silicon chip. I mean, we're just getting away from the silicon chip in the last, 10 years. But the silicon chip is what made us give us our communication age. Our ancient ancestors were using these big, gigantic temples as big silicon chips, and they were programming the star's energy into them, which was giving them so much energy to use for interdimensional travel, for energy for their towns and their homes. I mean, we have forgotten this information. We look at these ancient cultures and we're like, we're not quite sure what was happening there. But they were so far more advanced than we are today. Just like, we can't build a temple with that precision today with the machines that we have. And yet they didn't have any machines then, because they were using energy like Cesar, sonar, to lift these rocks. And here we are today. We just can't match it. But we're coming back full circle now. We're starting to wake up. But the stars are 100% energy vortexes.
Fair enough. It's been also sort of like when you see what you see as a sunspot on the sun is also like sort of an entrance to that vortex. Do you think there's some accuracy behind that?
Yeah, so what the sun is the magnificent magnifier. Okay, so when you look at the solar system, you have the sun and the moon, and from our perspective are the same exact size. So when you look at science, they say, well, the sun is ginormous and the moon is much smaller, and it's all based on proportion, based on distance. But from our perspective, the moon and the sun are the exact same size. Then you have the constellations, which are behind the sun and the moon. So what happens is the sun is magnifying the frequencies of the constellations that it's in front of. So when the sun moves into Aquarius, it's magnifying the Aquarian energy into our realm, into our matrix. So when you look at each star has a vibrational frequency. It has its own energy that it projects into our realm, right? It has a sound and there's a light. When you put a bunch of stars together, it becomes a constellation. It becomes a symphony of light and sound that is then projected into our reality, that our bodies then attune to allow us to have these different experiences. And the sun is magnifying the energy of the constellation that it resides in for that month, that 20 to 38 days, or 28 to 30 days. So that's what the sun is. The sun is a magnifier that magnifies the symphony of the expression of the constellation. And the constellations are all archetypes. It's all archetypal energy that's being projected into this realm. So I'm a Sagittarius, okay? So when I was born, the sun was in Sagittarius, which then the energy at the time of birth then locked into my chakra system. So my awareness came into this body, and my body now holds the perception and the perspective of a Sagittarian. So I'm very spiritual. I am always seeking for the larger answers to life, and that's a Sagittarian perspective. So when you look at all these constellations and what gives you your sun sign, your ascendant sign, we're talking about energies that are locking into your human energy vortex fields to give you an experience. And we see through these experiences. So when the sun then moves into those constellations, those energies are being broadcasted into our reality.
Thank you. I guess I might as well switch gears now and go straight back to your bio here. Some of the things that you said are worth discussing. On your bio here, astro travel and channeling. Okay, are astro travel and remote viewing one and the same, or is there a difference? And what is the difference if there is?
Um, they are different. Um, Remote viewing is more of you're still in the room and you still know that you're in the room. And when you're astral traveling, it's more like a dream. Like you're in the experience and you forget about the room completely that you're in. So it's more of a real, tangible experience when you're astral traveling. Whereas when you're remote viewing, it's more of a meditative, um, hypnagogic experience where you still feel yourself in the room, but yet you can see things that aren't in the room in this, in this reality.
Glad you pointed that out because I recently heard that they are the same, and thought I don't know about that. I've heard see, it's one of those agree to disagree kind of things. So,
Yeah.
well, all right. Let me go to your website here, and well, okay, meditation. I see you got an image of a meditator there, um, and when it comes to meditation, there seems to be a lot of agree to disagree kind of things myself. One of the notable things I actually noticed recently when I was at a conference in Virginia, it was a pyramid conference of sorts run by Pari Patri and her father, who's been really working hard to get pyramid knowledge in India and the rest of the world at large. When we were doing a meditation led by him, he seemed very picky about always make sure you keep your eyes closed. I mean, you can screw up a lot of parts of the meditation, but as long as you keep your eyes closed, that's a safety net of sorts to make sure that you don't lose the quality of the meditation that you're doing. And he also, and he gave me a little bit of an earful of sorts about this. Keep your arms together, or well, not necessarily clasped, but together on your lap. I put my arms out when I was sitting lotus position on my knees with the thumb and the forefinger touching each other. When he noticed that, he went up to me, grabbed my arms, and just welcome to the session, put them in my lap, as he was very insistent that I'm not getting the most of the meditation unless I have my hands in that position. Now, I see in this picture here on your site where it says attain a higher perspective of yourself and all of humanity. Next to that, there's a blue and violet picture of sorts with a silhouette of a person with a light in the center of his chest. And he's actually got that. His thumb and his forefinger are not connected, but he still has it on the knees. So I couldn't resist but ask you and bring that up to you. Um, what do you think some people's problem is regarding insisting that you don't hold that position, and if there are benefits to that position that you show in that picture, what are they? If you really want to explain to this person, no, you really didn't have to put my arms together like that, it's not necessary, I really am benefiting from my style hands on knees. So any comments about that?
Um, I would say honestly, it's tomato tomato. It's all about disciplines. So there's so many different disciplines out there who claim to have it exactly right. And if you do this, you're going to have a halo around your head and you're going to be lifting off. For me, like I said, meditation just isn't about sitting there and crossing your legs and putting your hands in a certain position. It's about being present. And every day becomes a meditation to where you're connected to your higher self continuously, where the flow is just always there flowing. With the eyes, I will say, with the eyes open, 1/3 of your brain power goes to your eyes and seeing. So what's nice about shutting down your eyes is when you shut your eyes down, you can then take that energy, that 1/3 of your brain power, and direct that energy somewhere else. Um, so I personally would say, I mean, if you're going to be in savasana or you're sitting down and cross-legged, I would say You can close your eyes if you want to go somewhere, if you would. But you can be present. It's kind of like the astral projection and remote viewing thing, you know. So if you want to sit there, you can keep your eyes open and remote view. But if you want to astral project, you definitely want to close your eyes because you want to be in another realm in the dream state, right? So for me, I don't think it's that big of a deal where your hands are, especially for you. If I was to say, hey, put your hands here, that completely takes you out of the vibration of where you were at. And now you have to work to get back to where you were. And now you're thinking, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And it just takes the whole momentum. But unless he's teaching a specific discipline to get a specific experience that he's talking about, which I don't know, I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what he was talking about. But for me, I don't think it's necessary for myself. I can do it anyway and be centered. And that's what it's all about, is being centered. Because the truth is, you don't want to go home and turn it off or turn it on. You want to be turning it on all the time, no matter where you're at. When you're at work, when you're at home, when you're with the kids, when you're with your friends. It's not about turning something on and off. It's about becoming something that you always are and being in tune with who you always are and not wavering from that.
Thank you for explaining that. Also, about that meditation, whether or not meditations are certain ones are better than the other, or whether it's tomato, as you said. The John of God meditations that I do, and just as a side note, I am very sure that John of God has actually done nothing wrong, and that whole thing about putting him in jail for sexual abuse and whatnot is just a way to get him off the system, because he's a threat to the powers that be. And why they waited until now to finally go after him, well, they wanted to go after him for so long, but they didn't want to create karma for themselves, I guess, and they eventually decided, well, now we have to go after him, because if we don't, we're totally screwed. So it makes create bad karma for us, but you know what? We're just built on survival, so we don't care. We're just going to not care about karma. We're going to go after him anyway. So that's what I think really happened. But the point is, during John of God meditations, the instructors have said that the entities that work via John of God have said, don't cross your arms and legs during the John of God meditations. It actually helps the entities do their healing work. Fair enough, but I'm still a little confused as to why it would be an issue, especially for entities like that are supposed to have the ability to to do a lot of things because they're of a higher consciousness. Well, then
Right.
again, I don't know if I should be saying that. I once some psychic was channeling my paternal grandfather on the other side. Grandfather said, "I'm going to try to appear in your dream." And I jokingly said, "Is there anything I can do to communicate with you a little more easily? Like maybe go to the local pharmacy and buy some over-the-counter cough medicine bottles and chug it?" And he said, "Well, I think it's funny and all that you say that, but in all seriousness, it's actually easier for us entities to do work and channel on someone who's sober rather than someone who's tripping balls on some psychoactive substance." So, well, I guess if that's the case, then it may actually make sense that entities have an easier time on non-crossed legs than they would on someone who's cross-legged and crossed-armed. So, yeah, I hear you laughing, but in all seriousness, what do you have to say about this
Yeah.
somewhat controversial issue?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, if you look at body language, right? When someone crosses their arms and they cross their legs, they're actually going internal. So they're blocking themselves off from the external world. So I could see how when you do cross, you could be closing off certain energy aspects to the ether, right? But it all goes back to like being present. So when you're present and your energy is at a constant, match to your higher self, it doesn't matter what you're doing, crossing, or you'll be able to speak to whomever you want, whenever you want. You can close your eyes and that person will be there and you can have that experience talking to them. So, could you use psychedelics? I'm sure people can, but the idea now is to move away from those things and really move into you being present at all times. And when you do that, you're able to talk to your higher self, which has access to all the dimensions and realms where all our loved ones, all the ascended masters, and all these beings are. So the veil can be lifted through the higher self, but you have to be centered enough to be able to hear that communication. The communication's always there. It's just like the cell phone waves are right here in the room right now. You can't see them, but once you turn your phone on and pick it up and make a call, you're using them, right? The energy and the beings, the dimensions are all right here. It's you. You're the tuner that tunes in or tunes out. And so, I mean, I can see how crossing your arms and leg could close you off in the idea of body language, but honestly, it's all about where you want to go. And I think we should all have complete control over our bodies and where we direct it. I don't think we need entities or anything like that to come in and do it for us. I think we have to take responsibility and do it. And I know that we can do it.
I have no doubt that we can do it too, and different ways to do it for sure. Now, so okay, since you chose the title for your website, "The Soul's Dream," might as well ask you what the word soul means to you. George Kavassilis is one of the individuals who I think may have given the best possible description that you could give for what soul is, and he compared it and contrasted it with spirit and consciousness. Well, first of all, consciousness, the awareness of being aware, simple as that. Um, but soul, he asserts that consciousness comes from soul. And what is spirit? Well, some cultures say soul and spirit are the same thing. Two different words for the same thing. Others say no. It's there is a difference. Um, Spirit is more definitive, as in George Kavassilis' description of it is he described a spirit could be thought of as spears coming out of the soul, and he said it's actually even a play on the word spear and the word it. You're like you're throwing a spear at it, whatever it is, and what he means by that is the spears could be thought of as different parts of the soul that become manifested within the acknowledged illusion of time and space at different locations and different times and different places, which I could be the it in spear it, and it's more definitive, more defined, not as broad as what soul is, but still the soul nonetheless, just more specific. So that
Yeah, no,
difference between soul, spirit, and consciousness. What's your take on agreeing or disagreeing with that?
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, yeah, I like George a lot. I love his content's fantastic. But no, I agree with that. So the soul is when you look at the I am, right? I is the source of all thing. Am is the action. I is the soul. Am would be the spirit of the experience throughout the whole entire process. But the soul is a thing in which we all unite through. It's how we are all truly one. We're all one through the soul. So there are different aspects of the the vibration that give us our own personality, which comes through spirit. And then there was a gentleman named Prashant who says, it was pretty interesting, that we're all spirits, and that we come in as spirits, and that we work to gain our soul, which was a pretty interesting concept, that we're all here working as spirits to become eternal, to have our soul. But I think we're all eternal right from the beginning. I don't think we're becoming something. I think we are just experiencing ourselves through many different expressions of vibrations.
Thank you very much for explaining that. And what else to talk about that I see on your website? Okay, the channeling. Um, there's this book called "I Am Understanding Who and What You Are." Volume One is a compilation of your first year of channelings, which was in 2006. Um, we got time to kill, so I still got another hour and 10 minutes. So why don't you, you got the floor on this, tell us what you received in your channelings, who were you channeling again, what were your entities, the specific entities, if you can identify them and pinpoint who they were, and what dimension or density of consciousness they came from, for that matter, by all means do. Um, and tell us, what did they teach you from a knowledge and wisdom standpoint?
Yeah, so when I first started out with the whole channeling experience, when I was going to the groups, they were ascended masters that were coming through um, the main channel at that time. So my association was through the Ascended Master's understanding, the Ascended Master teaching. So when I first started, I'd say very, very short starting, um, I I would use the energy of the Ascended Masters, and then I quickly realized as I'm going through this that the I am is the source of all things. Doesn't matter what Ascended Master it is, doesn't matter what being it is, doesn't matter who or what it is. I am is the source of all things. So then I changed who I was channeling to I am. I would never give a name and never ask the name because I believe that we're all one through I. So a lot of my 2006 to 2010 was about the understanding of oneness and how we are all one through the action and expression of I am. And that's where I pretty much got my associations to create the Soul's Dream. So I had the format laid out then in 2010 of the Soul's Dream. And then it took me years to find the associations so I can share with people, because when I say certain things, some people don't have the reference points to understand what I'm talking about. Like when I talk about the sun, people, like, yeah, okay, because there's no reference points to the stars being energy or the sun being a magnifier of the stars behind it. So it's kind of like people can kind of like not really grasp exactly what I'm saying. So when we're talking about like we're all one. That's like a thing that we all talk about today, how we're all one. Everyone says oneness and all this stuff, but they really don't understand exactly how we are all one. And when you get into the understanding of oneness and consciousness and fractals, and how consciousness is nothing but a fractal, and how our whole entire dimension of space-time is nothing more than a fractal of different frequencies and different dimensions of space-time, like George Cavassos will talk about. Like, so when he says the soul will come in on the 12th dimension and then transcend down, and then it would go into the gestation period, which was, I think, the 8th level for him. And then he said then they come into the 5th and 6th dimension where angels would reside. This is the angelic realms. And then he'd move into the 4th dimension where the ETs would reside, and then into the 3rd dimension where we're at today. So we come from a very, very high awareness, a very high understanding, and we descend down in consciousness. We come from the angelic realms, and we put ourselves down into this 3rd dimensional reality so that we can have this experience. So we all have been ETs in the 4th dimension. We've all have been angels, and we all have been God. And we have just fractalized ourselves down into this expression and these experiences of calling ourselves Jason Layton, right? I'm just an identity, but I'm the awareness. It doesn't matter if I'm dreaming, if I transcend, if I die, wherever happens, the awareness of who I am is eternal. And that's the I in which I always spoke about.
Thank you. Now to continue with this interview, something I think is worth going over one by one, bit by bit here. 7 information-packed lessons, the course providing the knowledge and techniques to provoke your soul to initiate your ascension process. I'm reading right off the website there.
Yeah.
You touched on some of this earlier, but let's go over it in more greater detail. Lesson 1, everything is energy. The bullet points here say everything is energy, the vibration of sound, the vibration of light, and energy body. Now, the two that I'm interested in elaborating on is vibrations of sound and vibrations of light. This universe is said to be entirely constructed of light, and if that's the case, then, well, how do we make sense of sound being a form of light? How do you, sound we know can be converted into heat, and light can be converted into heat. So how do you convert light into sound and sound into light, to make sense of how they could be two different versions of the same thing, with
The
light
same
being the
thing.
dominant one, if that's what our universe is said to be constructed of?
Right. Yeah. Well, really, like I was saying, the first thing we have to understand is energy, right? So, sound and light are just the expressions of energy and different vibrations. But in the course, I showed a video. It's called sonoluminescence. Are you familiar with that? So,
So,
so So
Sonoluminescence?
yes,
As in sound luminescence, like sonar
yeah,
luminescence.
yeah.
Okay, I don't think I've seen
So
the video, but okay,
yeah,
continue.
so what it is it's in a medium of water, right? And they pump these high frequencies into the water, and it creates a bubble. And inside of that bubble, it vibrates so fast that sound comes out of that bubble. And it's interesting when you look at the ancient texts, such as even the Bible, right? The first thing was sound. Let there be light. So the sound was before the light. But when you're looking at light and sound, they're really one and the same. They're just an expression of the energy. I mean, our whole entire existence is light and sound. The stars are putting off. If you Google sounds of the stars, you'll hear the energy of the stars, sounds of the planets, right? The planets are just the wanderers, the lights, the same thing as the stars, just they're a little bit closer. They're they're giving off sound and they're giving off light. We, as a human, are giving off sound and giving off light. Our aura is sound and light. It's really one and the same, just two different expressions of the same thing, and that thing is energy. So I break it down each lesson. I break that down with videos showing how we move from one to the next. And I start off with sound, and then I break down how we understand sound with hertz, and what hertz are, what vibrations are. They're just measurements of what the energy is. And then I go into the understanding of light. What we call light, what we call our reality, what we see is a very, 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 very narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's called visible light, which is like 730 angstroms or 730 nanometers, wherever you want to call it. So to give you a perspective of that, a piece of paper, the width of a piece of paper is 100,000 nanometers or 100,000 angstroms wide. So we're seeing in this extremely, extremely, extremely small band of the electromagnetic spectrum, and then we're calling that our reality through what we term as light. But light and sound, like I said, are really one and the same. They're vibration and energy expression.
I think we're making sense of that. Listen to the medium of light, mythology of the medium, the science of the medium, and the cosmology of the medium. Okay, well, medium is that uh, when you say medium, do you mean like what some people confuse as a channeler, even though a medium and a channeler
No,
are the same
yeah,
thing?
yeah, no. It's what all things move through. The
Okay,
medium.
that's what you meant, medium. Okay,
Yeah,
I should have been able to realize that. Of course, that's what you're
yeah.
talking about. So,
So the
well,
medium is water.
okay,
Everything moves through water. The medium of our whole entire existence is water. Water is an amazing substance. And think about our bodies. We're made up of 100% we're in the fetus, and then as a child we're 90%, and as we get older we go down to 40% in our older years. And what's interesting is when we're a baby, our skin is so beautiful, right? It's so elastic. We cut it, it grows really back really quick, and as you get older, we wrinkle up because we're losing the medium, the water inside of us. And then Emoto did a lot of work. I'm sure Isuru Emoto, you familiar with his work
yeah,
with
using
the
sound
crystals?
with
Yeah,
crystal structures and bad
yeah.
sounds cause bad crystal structures. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Well, yeah. It's really it's intentions. So the intentions create the molecules to change of the water to whatever the intention was, and then they were showing how water holds memory. So space is now looking to be water. Our realm that we're in here is now looking to be water. In our atmosphere, I think there's 38 billion trillion gallons of water in our atmosphere. I mean, that is a lot of water. But it's at different densities. So when you ever see like a supermoon and the moon is like ginormous, it's like, man, look, the moon is right there. The moon is no closer. What's happening is the vapor field that's like a 20-mile field from the ground to the into the sky. It's like a magnifying glass because there's so much density of water in our atmosphere that it magnifies the moon or it magnifies the sun by the horizon. So everything
Well, let me
from
hold you.
space.
Hold you right. Sorry to interrupt you, but hold you right up there for a moment. I've heard about that where the moon seems to be bigger on the horizon than it does end up in the sky. Some say it's just the Ponzo illusion upside down, um, but to actually show that you say that it basically magnifies it. Well, if you were to take out a pencil with it, I've done this experiment. Take out a pencil at arm's length with the eraser and compare the size of the moon to the size of the eraser at the horizon, and then do it several hours later when it's right up in the sky. It's going to be just the same size either way, compared to the eraser, even though it looks bigger at the horizon. So even though you say it's magnifying it, well, not really, because it's not any bigger than it was in the when it's
Oh
up
no,
there in the
it's
sky. It's
have you never seen a harvest moon? It's way
harvest
big.
moon.
Yeah, you never seen a harvest moon at the on the horizon? It's massive.
Well, it looks massive,
Uh,
but I've done that experiment where you take the uh, pencil with a large full eraser at an arm's length right next to the moon and compare the size of the moon to the size of the eraser, and then do
yeah,
that several hours later when the moon is right up in the middle of the sky with the pencil eraser. It for real, it's not any. I can assure you, it's not bigger in relation to the size of the eraser when it was on the horizon than it was if you do that experiment up in the sky. It just appears bigger. Try the same
right.
experiment yourself, and I assure you, you'll notice that the size of the moon relative to the eraser is the same, regardless of whether it's on the horizon or up in the sky. So,
But what makes it bigger though? What makes it perceived bigger is the water vapor in that 20-mile vapor field.
okay, you were confusing me there for a moment because
Yeah. No, the moon's not bigger. It
it's
doesn't
not
grow any
bigger.
bigger.
No.
No, we're perceiving it to be bigger through the magnification to the water in the lower atmosphere. So the medium is what's carrying all the information around the world and through the solar system. Interestingly enough, when you see NASA, when they practice to go into space, they practice in water. When you look at sonoluminescence and how sound is then vibrated and creates light, and you look at a star, it look identical. So when you start looking at all these different ways of how the stars are being populated from the higher dimensions, right? So the higher dimensions run the lower dimensions. And if you like George Cavasos's expression of what he believes to be dimensions, he's saying the same exact thing, how the higher dimensions run the lower dimensions. And as it goes down, it's just a fractal of the upper dimensions. So when we look at these archetypes of these energies of the stars, of these constellations together, we have these archetypes within inside of us. And as we go even higher, those archetypes they're there throughout the whole entire process as we go up. So everything, all these energies has to move through something. It's moving through water. Water is the medium which all life moves through. And the water is programmable. You can program the water with your intentions, which has been shown through Emoto. And it has been shown through the science in Yale, where when you touch a glass of water, the water imprints instantaneously to your vibrational frequency. And I show that in that as well. So it's amazing how fast water adapts to you individually, your individual blueprint. And then it carries that water into the realm, into the reality, right? The water is then picked up, it's moved through clouds, and then dispersed all over the place. It could be how the collective consciousness is sharing data and information between each other. Because energy and light and sound all need a medium to move through. All of it needs a medium.
Yeah, and water is a common medium in our reality for sure. No doubt about that. And let's move down to the next. Okay, what things are the way they are today, and the meaning of ascension? What is time, fractal time, the great year, and the gestation of the soul? I know we touched on this a little earlier, but when it comes to how time works, the Maya way of counting 1, 2, 3, 1 back to one because it's cyclical is definitely the right way to do it. Um, and also this whole great year thing about the precession of the equinox. I also want to get your take on another great year of sorts. It has been said by some that there is another great year that of another precession where the Earth. Best way to describe this: take a basketball, put a needle on top of the basketball, spin the basketball so the needle is heading towards the ground, and then, well, the needle would break off in reality if you did this, but let's imagine you could roll the
Hmm.
basketball over, the needle on the ground, and then it'll roll all the way back up to where it originally was. The needle could be thought of as the North Pole there. That's another type of precession of the equinoxes that Earth is said to go through, and has been said that happens. Full precession of that sort occurs once every 2,600,000 years. And what's really interesting about that number is that 2,600 is said to be one of the zodiac time periods, I believe.
Yeah.
And why it is, if you multiply it by 1,000, you get that number. What is the significance of that? Well, I'm sure there is one. Um, but well, I'll ask you. Do you see any significance of that? Do you know anything about the Earth actually going through such a precession of that nature that's different than
Yes.
the
Yeah.
precession that we think of?
There's multiple cycles. I mean, there are cycles within cycles within cycles, and I think it was the Mayans who brought those understandings of different cycles coming through. And the reason why I focus on the gestation of the soul was because um, it's the length of time that the soul goes through to understand and experience vibration of light and sound and become masters of vibration. Because then, like George Cavassos would say, right? Um, he says we come into this universe, this one verse, and we're here to experience this universe. But then once we're done going through all the levels of dimensions, go back up, and then we go out into the multiverse. And we can go into a multiverse where the golden mean isn't the golden mean anymore, it's a different mean completely, where the ratios of life is completely different. And maybe it's not about light or sound at all. But we can take our knowledge and our experience that we gain from here into other um, multiverses, into another universe, and experience and create our own universe with the understanding of sound and light.
Thank you. And
So,
regarding space and time, comparing them, I heard in a fascinating interview once where Bob Tuskin did with some some individual who said that space is actually masculine in nature and time is feminine in nature. Does that make any sense to you?
um, I mean, it's interesting. I'd have to look more into it though, but no, I mean, I, I would love to hear the theory of why time would be feminine.
Well, his idea was that, um, well, he said the time allows for more of a coagulation of of space. If there was no time, no feminine counterpart to the masculine space, there wouldn't be as much coagulation, I believe was the word that he used in that interview.
Yeah,
Any comments?
yeah. I mean, like I said, I really don't have too much information on that, so I really can't speak to it. But it sounds interesting. I mean, right? I mean, yeah.
Not going to
I
argue with
don't
that
know.
that it is. Um, Also, the great year. It's how long exactly is it really? I'm sure when you listen to George Cavazos' work, he would say back in like 2011 and 2012 and that time period, he said the real time period of the precession of the equinox is a little over 24,000 years, and it varies from that to, well, the 26,000 that we hear about. And he did in a presentation that he did once. This was before he got a lot of flack for being mistaken about the 2012 solstice and the 2013 equinox being the time when Earth ascends into 5D. He was wrong about that, but when he did give a presentation when he did back that up, he did give some mathematical evidence for how the precession of the equinox should actually be thought of as being 24,000. I think it's 432 years or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And actually, the exact number, someone told him that the weight of the Georgia Guidestone, the top Georgia Guidestone that's at the very top of the Georgia Guidestone structure is actually that weight. That is the exact number of the number of years that he says. That's a little over 24,000 that the precession of the equinox is. That's its weight in pounds of the Georgia Guidestone that's lying
Yeah.
flat on top of the others. Um, do you, by any chance, remember that where he was talking about that? He said, I think the number phi, the Greek letter phi, which sort of looks like, I think, an O with a little bit of a drawing line through it or something, or is that
Yeah.
the null
Yeah.
number? Okay, whatever. That number he said plays a role in proving that that's the accurate precession of the equinox number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know
I
anything about that? About that being the true
yeah.
great year?
Well, the problem that we have here is that our history has been completely erased. Like our history is completely erased. So, to really the dates and times, I mean, it's definitely between 24 to 26,000 years, but exactly where we're at in it, I mean, it's really we really can't tell because we have no reference points. Again, I mean, all of our history has been pillaged, and it's still being pillaged today. I mean, look at all the wars that are happening. Where are they happening at? Afghanistan, you know, all on that side of the world where there's still intact a lot of ancient knowledge that's hidden away in these caves. Um, the first thing they went and did when they went into Baghdad is they ransacked the Baghdad Museum, and it wasn't for to turn around and sell the stuff. They just demolished it. The same thing with the burning of Alexandria. I mean, if that library was still alive, we'd have a lot of answers to where we are, who we are, what we are. But all that information was completely demolished with good reasons to give us the experience of forgetting who we are so we can completely forget who we are, only to awaken and remember who we are. But it's still going on. So for us to know the exact date of the 24 to 26,000 year cycle of where we're at, it's definitely hard. But I would say this. I feel we're definitely in the age of Aquarius. Because, I mean, when you look what the Aquarian energy is, the Aquarian energy is all about unveiling. It's about technology. It's about moving in to this new way of being where you drop off the old and you move into a completely, basically a different dimension altogether. And that's where we're at now. We're kind of moving into this new phase where you look at where we were in the 1800s to where we are today, the technology boom and the information age where we're at today, that's all Aquarian energy. So I feel we're definitely in the age of Aquarius. Um, and the age of Aquarius, I believe, they predict to be between 1447 and even out to 3597. So they're not sure, but I know we're definitely moving into that age right now. So where
So
we're
you
at,
do not. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you do not agree with that assertion that the age of Aquarius started, whatever month that was, in 1962, when the five visible planets with the naked eye were all in the constellation of Aquarius. Which shortly thereafter there was that popular song written called that goes,
yeah,
"This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius."
okay,
You don't
yeah,
believe that
by
theory?
fifth dimension. How awesome is that though? Great song by Fifth Dimension.
That's
But
so
no,
cool.
like
Oh yeah.
honestly, I don't have enough supporting evidence to say that's exactly it. Like I'm saying, we don't have a reference point to when the exact thing is happening. But based on our collective experience in this reality, we are definitely moving into an age of technological boom and uncovering. We can see all this uncovering going back into what has been happening to us and how we've been treated by our governments and our religions and what they were doing and how it was being done. All this information is coming up and all this secrecy, all these big secrets that have been being kept are coming to the forefront of our minds right now. All this stuff is coming up, and that shows that's an Aquarian energy that's happening. So exactly when the date happened, I mean, it could have definitely been when those stars aligned. I would love to believe that. I mean, understanding what stars are and how they bring about energy shifts could definitely be, but I can't say for certain because I don't have enough supporting evidence to say this is the date. That's the problem with dates is I've lost my faith in them because there's been so many dates that have been prophesized, throughout my life, and like, oh, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. It's like another day. It's another day, except for 2012. So I haven't, I wasn't sick for probably, I'd say 3 years. I hadn't got a cold or anything like that. December 21st, 2012, I got like deathly sick, like this, like it was a 2 day thing. It came on the 21st and was gone on the 23rd, but I was so sick. So something for me definitely shifted at that time frame.
Must have been
But
ascension symptoms similar to the ones that Michelle Walling said that she went through, that caused
yeah,
all kinds of trouble for her that day.
yeah,
So you're not the only one who had that, I'm sure.
yeah.
Um,
So I would say for me, my personal experience that day that was prophesized, I had an experience on that day. Whereas previous prophecies that I've been told about, I didn't have any symptoms of anything really going on. But that day I had a symptom. So personally, I can say that I felt a shift that day.
Fair enough. We all felt a shift for sure. We didn't really acknowledge it to some degree. All right, where did I want to go with this? Oh, yes, one more thing about the great year. See if you have anything to say about this. The late John Major Jenkins, in his Maya Cosmogenesis 2012 book, this may actually be the only source out there that actually explains this. He, in that book, I've never read it, I've never actually been able to read the article, and I tried researching this in greater detail on the internet, but there's really nothing out there about it. He mentioned, John Major Jenkins did, in his second 2012 book called The 2012 Story, that in My Cosmogenesis 2012, he explained that it's not an accident that the Earth, precession of the equinox cycle, the great year, is about 26,000 years, and the Earth's distance from the center of the Milky Way galaxy is 26,000 light years. I tried to research why that's the case, and the only thing I could find on the net was something about it deals with the precession of a proton relative to its distance from some source of some sort. I think maybe the precession of a proton in relation to the distance that it is from the galactic center, whatever object the proton is. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure on that, but he did say that you could think of the Earth as a proton of sorts, and the I guess maybe the galactic center as the center of like any given object. What if a given object had a galactic center, then the precession of the protons of the atoms in that um, object would be in relation to its distance from whatever the center, galactic center of that given fractal object would be. But again, there really isn't anything out here,
Right.
and my John Major Jenkins, my Cosmogenesis book, I've never read it. I haven't bought it. It's not even available at my local libraries, even though the other one, the 2012 story, was, which I did read. It was a
hmm
great book. But now that I brought this to your attention, do you have anything to say about this? And you would have to think that if it's true, then the same thing would also have to be true with pretty much almost every other thing that's a planet out there in the cosmos in relation to its distance from its galactic center and its precession. Any comments?
Right. Yeah. So that's where what in lesson three I talked about fractal time. So what a fractal is a fractal is a self-similar pattern that repeats and repeats and repeats. And I mean, have you seen a Mandelbrot set? No matter how far you go into the Mandelbrot set, at any point on the picture, it always brings up the same exact pattern. So when you're looking at these bigger cycles to these smaller cycles and these distances, how all the numbers seem to correlate, it's not by accident. It's all by design. When you look at the gestation of the soul is between 24 to 26,000 years. The human gestation is between 260 to 280 days, which is a very close similarity. I mean, as we start looking into all these cycles, we're going to see these patterns repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, and these distances repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. And I forget who it was. They were talking about the distance from the moon, from the actual the length of the moon, the length of the sun from our perspective was like, I think it was 2,100 miles, and that's the same 2,100 as the um, constellation's length, right? So when you look at the similarities of all these different numbers coming in, and they're all playing a part in the same formulas to give us this amazing expression. So also, let me get into this real
Okay.
quick. What fractal time? Okay. So what drew my attention to the fractal time, honestly, was the from the northern hemisphere. When you look at tropical astrology, this plays perfectly, right? So the southern southern, it's in reverse, but from the northern hemisphere, it's placed perfect. When you look at March, we move into March on Aries on the 21st of March. Then we move into Taurus in April, and then Gemini in May. June is Cancer, and so forth. Okay, so now if you overlay the day, the hours of the day, with the months go in 30-degree bands. Okay, so Aries is a 30-degree band. It's also a 2-hour band. So every hour is a half. It's 15 degrees. So Aries starts the day, they say, right? You have this fire energy. Then you move into 8 o'clock, which is Taurus. So Taurus is about getting ready for your day. Then you move into 10 a.m., which is Gemini. And then you move into June, which is Cancer, 12 p.m. July, which is 2 p.m. Leo. Now, what's interesting is high noon is 12 p.m. High noon for the month is June. The June 22nd is the highest point where the sun is the longest day, okay? And 12 p.m. is where you have the sun at its highest point. When you look at December 22nd is the winter solstice when the sun is at its lowest point where we have the shortest day. And now that is 12 a.m. And then when you have the equinoxes, you have 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., which are equal day and equal night right across from each other. And then when you look at this is interesting. When you look at Leo, they say the dog days of Leo is the hottest time of the year. And that Aquarius is the coldest time of the year. Now, when you match that up with the hours, 3 p.m. is the hottest point in our day. And that's directly in the center of Leo. 3 a.m. is the coldest point of the day, and that's directly in the center of Aquarius. So when you look at our day is a fractal of the whole entire year. And it's through the constellations moving above our heads, giving us these different perspectives and these different experiences with the same energies. But what's different is the angle. So if we look into astrology and you look at the aspects, it's all about the way that the relationships that these energies combine with each other. And it's through these angles that give us the experience that are either conjunct or conjoint, or they're either in our favor or not in our favor. Some are challenging and some are not. And the only thing that's changing is the angle in which the light and sound of those systems are hitting our individual energy field, our chakra system, our human being. So it's so amazing when you look at time in and of itself. It's a fractal of itself. And then you have the month or the moon cycle. The day is based on the sun. I mean, it's our whole entire reality is based on the stars, and most people have no clue. I mean, they say, "Oh, it's 8 o'clock," but they really don't know what 8 o'clock really even means. They just say, "Oh, we're going to meet here at a point in time, in space." But it's really an energetic field that's there that we could use if we started to understand it like our ancient ancestors did.
Our ancestors were no fools, no question. It's time we start living like them, I see, in many ways, and don't lose touch with what they knew. Okay, moving on to lesson 5 here. Before maybe get into the sub points here, the first thing I notice it says laws of the universe, and I want to get into that very phrase there for a moment and how our understanding of the laws of the universe has actually been altered and in some cases revolutionized in how we can make sense of things. I've been hearing, among other things, people have said Newton's laws of physics, they should, well, and Einstein's too, for that matter, they should be thought of as obsolete because it's not that they're wrong, it's that they don't tell the whole story. Well, then again, I've even heard people say they are wrong. I mean, if we were to actually have to acknowledge that Newton's laws are wrong, there's a lot of people that would be freaked out about that. Among other people, the 9/11 Truth movement. I mean, 9/11 Truth has been very big on explaining the official story must be a lie because, among other things, the Newtonian laws of physics show that, well, the story can't be true in regards to how the towers collapsed and all that. But if you were to say Newton's laws are wrong, that may freak out not a lot of 9/11 truthers who would say, "Oh my God, this invalidates everything we've ever shown to explain that the official story 9/11 is a lie because, well, Newton's laws can be violated." So, well, no, it's not that simple. I myself on
Yeah,
previous shows have explained what mine to make sense of this. You have to realize that the entities that carried out 9/11, be they people within the government or they're not Muslims. Let's say hypothetically they were, just for
right.
the argument's sake, those entities, or be they Muslims, people within the government, whatever, would have had to have been entrapped by the laws of the third dimensional matrix that we are in. So they, in executing staging 9/11, would never be able to escape from the third dimensional laws of physics, including Newton's laws. So for that reason alone, it's okay for 9/11 truthers to try to debunk the official story of 9/11 because the people that staged it would have itself been bound and restricted by those laws when they tried to carry out 9/11. Well, that's my
Right.
explanation for why the true movement need not worry to hear that Newton's laws are wrong. Am I right in explaining the way I explained it?
Yeah, no, that was beautiful.
Really?
Beautiful.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, well, that also raises the question, well, are Newton's laws really not wrong? They just aren't, they're just such a minor way of making sense of the whole thing. I've heard people say Newton's law, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's basically the most basic way you can explain the law of attraction. You reap what you sow. That is Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, just at a more textbook-like way of describing it. Do you agree or disagree with that? And would you use the word wrong to describe Newton's laws? Are they not wrong, or are they not wrong? They're just not the way we should be looking at if we expect to expand our consciousness.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're wrong at all. I think they were valid for what, 300 years or so.
Well, are they still valid now? It's just that
Yeah.
from a consciousness
Well,
standpoint, we should move past them.
well, I think there's new sciences that are better representations of our reality that we're not taking into account yet. So when you look at like let's just even the basis of quantum physics. I mean, what they're proposing, I think, is more important and more valid for our experience than Newton's laws. So if we can still, hold on to that old idea of Newton's laws and see the validation in it. But I think if we start moving into the new paradigm of really understanding that everything is energy and it's not about the particles anymore, we're going to make a major shift in our consciousness. So I think the Newtonian reality was more based on the particle expression, and the particle was the thing, and the gene created the being, and it's all about the genes and the particles. But what we're seeing now, that's not the case at all. I mean, we're looking into epigenetics now, showing that the genes are actually being changed by the environment. The environment is what controls the genes, not the actual the gene itself, because the gene's just a code, really. And then when you look at like the particle expression, if we keep on focusing on the particles, we're never going to get to the point of understanding that we're energy and that we can change our bodies. So if you look at I'm a hypnotherapist, right? What I like to do is work with people who need healings. It's so interesting when you have somebody who's been suffering for years from an ailment, a sickness, a pain, and you go in through the mind's way into their subconscious mind. The subconscious mind records everything. So you go into the subconscious mind and you ask the subconscious mind where they got this belief from, where they got this original imprint and coding that's holding on to these muscle memories, where these cells keep on coming back and holding on to these experiences, and it's all an emotional trauma that happened when they were younger. Once you remove that emotional trauma, all of a sudden the pain start going away, the healing start to happen, because what we are is an energetic being, and we have these emotions inside of us, and if we don't release these emotions, we can't get past the pain blockages, because what happens is the cells, when they reproduce, they hold on to that old memory because that emotion is so strong in that location. So once we go in there and you remove the emotional attachment to whatever it was that happened in the past, that energy is then cleared up and the ailment then goes away. So if you're looking at that from a Newtonian reality of particles, that's impossible. You have to go to the doctor to get a pill that's going to change your chemistry. But all the pill's really doing is just it's like a beta blocker, just blocking the signals, right? Or they go in there and they start cutting things out. We don't need to do that anymore. That's the old way of looking at things. It was good for its time. If you break your arm, you definitely want to go to the doctor. I mean, you don't want to, use mindfulness on a broken arm when your arm's broken in half, right? You definitely, the medical industry today has its place, just like Newtonian physics has its place. But we have to really start shifting into the new understanding of energies.
Agreed on that. However, when we'll get into I want to get into hypnotherapy in a moment. But before we do, understanding how we can manipulate energies and use the force, so to speak, to use a Star Wars
Mhm.
analogy, um, we kind of have to make sense that, well, I mean, if you really, really want to be strict and serious about it, there seem to be general laws of the universe, if you will, that would help us make sense of why certain things appear to be or are actually harder than others. Like, to use a Star Wars analogy that I've even used about this, the one where Luke Skywalker's ship sails into the swamp bog, and Yoda is trying to tell him that the same force ability that you use to move rocks around, why don't you use it to get the ship out of the water? And Luke says, moving rocks around is one thing. This is completely different. And Yoda says, no, it's no different, only different in your mind. And he explains that space and time are illusions. We're all luminous, not crude matter, as he says. And Luke says, you want the impossible. And then Yoda makes him look really bad and stupid by getting the ship out of the bog. And Luke says, I don't believe it. And Yoda says, well, no shit. That's why you failed, because you don't believe. Well, okay. The issue, however, is
Yeah.
size is said to actually, does size matter? Yoda says size doesn't matter. Well, when it comes to things like crystals and all that, I've heard people assert, no, 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 a big crystal really will make a bigger difference than a small crystal. Size does matter in that regard. And when it comes to moving humongous objects, I mean, anybody who practices telekinesis would assert that the ability to move the Titanic out of the ocean is definitely harder than moving a teeny tiny itsy bitsy piece of paper that's lying on a desk. So Yoda, it was not being entirely accurate when he said it's no different. There must be some sort of a difference that would cause something that's of a much bigger mass and much bigger volume to be more difficult for a telekinesis expert to move, that would explain that Yoda, he was kind of exaggerating in a sense, or downplaying, I should say, that there is no difference. In reality, there is, and if there is, well, how do we make sense of what that difference is, and how does it work? Do you have any
Right.
explanation on that phenomenon?
Right. And I would say it's all belief. It comes down to
Oh,
belief. I mean, if we look at it as energy, it's just you're just moving energy. It's not mass, it's energy. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, like what Yoda was doing, right? It's all in the mind. The issue with the people who are doing telekinesis today is they don't have the reference points to be able to do that. But it only takes one person to do it. And we've seen this time and time again with like records, right? Once someone breaks the reference point's there, and then before you know it, so many people are breaking the record, breaking the record, breaking the record until we get to like a whole point where no one can breach the new record. Then all of a sudden, someone comes along, breaks the record, and all of a sudden, everybody can start breaking the record. So what it is it's a reference point within the belief system. And once we get, to that point where we believe in ourselves enough and we believe in our abilities enough, I mean, really, the sky is the limit. But I think Yoda was right, and I understand what you're saying about like for us today, we need the calculative expression of mass to be able to think that we can do something. But really, I don't, in the future, we're not going to need that. But today we're going to, because again, we don't have the reference points to be able to fully believe in ourselves. We just don't. But what's interesting though is we are still moving little objects, which is fantastic. I mean, we're taking small strides. I mean, nothing happens overnight, especially with humanity. I mean, it's a very long journey down here. So, but we will be moving big objects. I mean, that's how they moved the pyramids. That's how they moved all those big heavy rocks, right? So, I mean, we don't have like again, we can't prove that. I mean, that's just surmising right now, but
fair
it's gonna
enough.
come out.
Yeah, it's going to come, I'm sure, in due
It's definitely
time.
gonna
And
come.
now, you want to say something? else.
Yeah, we're just turning the point of this energy coming into our fields of the awakening, of the ascension process. And if we started tuning ourselves to directing our attention with our intention to things that we desire, our lives are going to be filled with so much more purpose and so much more meaning. And that's what it's coming down to now. It's up to us, each one of us, every single day, to focus our attention, because our attention is our power. The greatest gift of humanity is our imagination, because we have the ability to imagine anything and everything. And when you look at the magnetics of the pineal gland, the third eye, and the heart, they're big, giant magnets. I mean, so I don't know if you have seen the information through heart math showing that they can detect the magnetic fields, you know, 13 to 15 feet away from the human body. And then you look at the pineal gland. It's called the pineal gland for a reason, right? Because it looks like a pine cone. What a pine cone looks like is magnetic fields. When you look at what magnetic fields look like, they look exactly like a pine cone. So our third eye and our heart chakra, or our heart energy, is huge magnets. And when we start drawing into our imagination, we can start pulling the experiences, because there's infinite experiences that we can live from. We can start pulling those experiences to us through this magnetic field. But it's the way we do this is through our intentions and our attention.
Thank you. Now, moving on to what you mentioned about hypnotherapy. Um, well, when I hear hypnosis, I kind of I can't help. I know it's for real. It's definitely real.
Yeah, yeah.
But why I can't help but roll my eyes when I hear that has to do with some past experiences I've noticed. Among other things, at my senior year of high school post prom party, they invited a hypnotist over,
Hmm.
and lo and behold, I was the first one he had to, in the entire graduating class, who he had to kick off stage because he couldn't hypnotize me. And the thing, well, he was different from some other hypnotists. Some see he was not as good because before hypnotizing all of us, he said, "Come up here with the mentality that you want to be hypnotized." And that's would say that he's a lousy hypnotist, because I saw another hypnotist named Tom DeLuca when I took part in a Penn State summer study program in high school once. And when he invited all the people up stage, Tom DeLuca did, he didn't actually ask everybody to come up here with the mentality that you want to be hypnotized, and yet, yeah, he still had to kick people off stage when he found out he couldn't hypnotize them. But he
Yeah.
still, there weren't that many people that he had to do that to, and it was pretty impressive. Now,
Mhm.
said said want come here with you want to hypnotize the guy at my post party, and I thought, okay, I'll play along, I'll do that. But he still had to. That was the first one he had to kick off. And it's interesting how after I told that at the dinner table to my family at a holiday dinner, not that long after that, my uncle, paternal uncle, father's brother, who was a science teacher at a high school for a while, he said he actually invited a polygraph expert to his class to test out some of the students. And when he took the polygraph test, he and the rest of the students were said, try to beat the polygraph test. Try to see if you can find a way to like lie when you're telling the truth, or tell the truth when you want to make the polygraph think that you're lying.
Mhm.
My uncle actually turned out to be the worst possible candidate, like almost a polygraph expert had ever seen. He was able to beat the polygraph test, and the polygraph was not very conclusive regarding whether he was telling the truth or not. So the fact that the hypnotist had to kick me off stage, and this happened to my uncle, um, I dare I say it, is there actually something in my family's genetics which would cause something like that to happen to my uncle and me, being a hypnotist, be it a hypnotist or a polygraph, and what exactly can you maybe help me make sense of why I would have been? What was it about me that made me unhypnotizable at that point, even though I tried to play along? Any
Right, right.
theories?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. So what a stage hypnosis does, it's all about quickness, right? So it's not about time, it's about quickness, because he has a performance that he wants to do. So he takes what he perceives to be the best subjects, brings them on stage, does some stuff, whoever's not cooperating in that moment, he kind of sends off. But it doesn't mean that you can't be hypnotized, because you're hypnotized all the time. And what hypnosis is the hypnagogic phase. It's a frequency. It's a vibrational frequency that your brain moves into. And we do it when we go to sleep at night, right before we switch off, and every morning we wake up and we're groggy. When you wake up and you're groggy, you're in the hypnosis state. When the interesting is when we're children, from the age of 1 to 7, we're in the theta state. Where the theta state is, it's the world of the imagination, but it's also the world of the program, the subconscious. So we can learn 3 to 4 languages very easily in that time space. And then as you get older, you move into higher frequencies. You have your alpha and your beta and gamma. And at those frequencies, it's very hard to learn something new because of the way that our mind processes. So what hypnosis does is it bypasses the critical thinker, right, the consciousness, and then goes right into the subconscious mind. And when you're in that state, it's like a super learning. You can learn really, really fast. And that's what interested me. Not so much the stage hypnosis. I mean, some of it was pretty cool what they could do. But what's interesting is when you put somebody into a hypnotic trance, you have access to their subconscious mind. And the thing is, when you open up the subconscious mind, you start asking questions. The subconscious mind knows all the answers. And all the blocks that you have inside of you, you don't consciously know them. You can't, even if you wanted to know them, you couldn't pull them up because they're so deep within your subconscious mind that you couldn't find them. But once you go into that alpha theta state, you can easily ask the question, and then boom, here comes all this information that's flowing up out of you that's going to help you in this point in life. And that's where I found hypnotherapy to be amazing, because once we can start pulling stuff up, we can start releasing those old traumas, those old energy fields, those old emotions inside of us, get rid of that, and then we can start to reprogram ourselves. Because really all a human being is a program. We're filled with programs. As soon as we come here, our parents program us. Our family programs us. Our friends program us. We take all these programs and then we're running them in the background. So all we really are is regurgitators. We hear information and regurgitate it, and then ever so slightly make it our own. Now, as you get to a mature level, we have the ability to be conscious, which means you're not living from the reaction of your programs. You're living from the response, where you can respond and be present with what's happening. When we react, we're running from the old paradigm, the old programs running in our subconscious mind. When we respond, we're running with our conscious mind. And this is where affirmations kind of fall short for us, because affirmations are about being in the moment, saying the affirmations. But if you look at the conscious mind and the whole entire day, the conscious mind's only there 5%. The other 95%, you're in your thoughts, you're in your head, thinking. We are not conscious. When you're conscious, you're present, you're in the moment. And that's where we have to start working towards daily to become more conscious and allow the old programs to be transformed into other programs that are going to assist us better in our life where we're at today. Because we're still running programs that we got when we're 5 years old that are running in our backgrounds that we don't even know are there, but they're running as if we're still 5 years old. It's amazing when you start to go into the subconscious mind and see where these people have gotten their ailments from. They picked it up when they were very, very young, and they're still expressing it in their life as if that was happening today. It's incredible. So really just hypnosis for me, it's a vibration. It's a frequency of the mind. And when you access that frequency of the mind, you have access to the higher self, which is the bridge of the subconscious mind. And that's why I was so intrigued with hypnosis when I came across it. And I was like, oh, I'm jumping right in because I understand it's all about mind power. It's all about you being present, right? So once you're present, once you're in the moment, you can then start to control the moment. And it's going to take some time for all of humanity to get there. Like I said, we still have a long time to go, but each one of us can start today. We don't have to wait for tomorrow. We can start today to become more mindful, more present. Turn off the TV. The TV is nothing but a program. That's all it's doing is programming. My great-great-grandmother, she loved the news, right? But she hated what was on the news. She was addicted to the news. She would hate what's on the news. She'd talk about how bad it was. And then she'd leave and she'd go to talk to her friends, and all she would talk about was on the news, regurgitating. And guess what? All she ever talked about was what she didn't like in life, because she was programmed to talk about that, because she allowed that into her subconscious mind, which then shoots that information out. But here's the problem with our cells. Our cells, when you look at epigenetics, our cells get its expression, its change from the environment. What's the environment? It's our mind. our mind is the environment of the cells. So when you see danger, right, this whole body chemistry happens inside of you where you go into fight or flight, you have to run. All the blood goes from your viscera out to your arms and legs. All the blood goes from the front of your head to the back of your head because you don't have to, you don't want logical thinking there. You don't want to like critically think, oh, should I move or should I not move? No, you want instincts. Boom, you're gone, right? So all the blood moves from the front to the back. You can't critically think, and all your blood moves from your viscera into your arms. But what happens is now all your cells are in protection, which means they can't rejuvenate, they can't regenerate, and they can't recover properly. And you can't critically think because all the blood is out of that part of the brain. So people are continuously putting themselves under stress, continuously watching the news, continuously watching all this stuff that's scaring them internally. Meanwhile, nothing is happening externally, but they're having the thoughts, which is then creating this fight or flight, allowing this cortisol to go into your system. It's completely wreaking havoc on our cells and on our being. It's making us sick. We're worrying ourselves sick because of the stresses that we have, the perceived stresses that we're having. They're really not even real stresses, they're perceived stresses. There's no immediate danger. There's no lying in front of you about to eat you. They're just perceived stresses, and we're putting ourselves into this fight or flight state all the time, which means our bodies can't regenerate and recover quickly. Then people are getting sick. They're going to the doctor. Now the doctor gives you a chemical drug. This chemical drug, all it's doing is just blocking the connection between point A and point B, so you no longer feel that pain. But guess what? The pain, the energy is all still there because the root cause is still there. So what hypnosis does is it allows us to go in there, remove those energy blocks, reprogram the mind to maybe even be just happier, right? Be less stressful. When you're less stressful, you're not in that fight or flight state, which means you're able to rejuvenate, recover, and repair quickly your physical body. That's just a basic thing that we could do. Very basic.
Yes. Although you say some of the thing, like the old motto, if it bleeds, it leads. That maybe has something to do with why some people like the news so much. But in some ways, well, you say it's not necessarily good for us to watch that. Well, I can't help but beg to differ. I mean, I used to watch a lot of Alex Jones back in the day, and I will say it seems to have made a man out of me more so than it would if I didn't watch him. So,
Yeah.
are you saying what I'm saying right now is actually all in my head? It really didn't make a man out of me, or is it possible that maybe I'm taking into account something that you failed to take into account when you said that these things are bad for you? This fear porn that people like Alex Jones seem
Right.
to love to do.
Yeah, no, well, here's what it comes down to. You can definitely watch that stuff, right? But how do you experience the experience? And that's the most important thing. And everybody experiences the experience differently. So you can watch Alex Jones, you can watch a horror show, you can watch the news and not be affected by it at all because you are experiencing the experience differently. But most people are having this biological stress going on inside of them when they're watching stuff like Alex Jones or the news. So you might have watched Alex Jones and you might have got excited about it. This information might have like got you really happy, right? Where it releases the hormones of endorphins into your body, which then creates recovery where it's not in a state of protection. You could have got really excited, really happy, and this information was making you excited. Everybody's different, but for the majority, that's not happening. People are getting stressed out from watching this stuff.
Fair enough. Now, some of the topics here, this interview that you did back in May 27, 2019 with on the Alenko's Kitchen YouTube channel. I see it's on topics to be discovered. One of the topics here, we've talked about it earlier, but still I want to touch on it again. Subconsciousness. Who is more accurate? The camp that says 95% subconscious, 5% conscious, or no, there is no conscious. It's all an illusion. Everything comes from the subconscious. 100% everything. Which camp are you more inclined to think is more accurate?
Um, I'm gonna go with the 95 and 5
Why so? Why is that?
because I believe that we have the ability to transcend our thoughts. And when we transcend our thoughts, we transcend our programs. So that when we're transcending the programs, we're not being ran by those programs. It's kind of you would experience that in a state of just pure bliss where thoughts really aren't present. Kind of like in an astral projection where you're in a place where there's not things to associate with. So the thought is kind of blank. There's no thought, which means that the subconscious mind isn't running. The subconscious mind, all it is a machine. It's just a recorder. It records. That's all it does. So if you have nothing to reference that association, then you are in pure consciousness. And I believe that we have the ability 5% of the day to be in that pure consciousness where we're just not allowing the thoughts of our past, our present to be influencing us. Where we can just be present with ourselves with no thought. So the subconscious mind, the subconscious and the conscious, they are two different things, but they are one and the same. It is the mind overall, but the subconscious mind, really what it is, it's just a recorder. The conscious mind is the creator.
Right. Now, one thing, you mentioned you're a big fan of George Kavasilis. Of course, I am too. You mentioned the third eye and the heart could be thought of as big magnetic spots. Of course, George Kavasilis, he has always been big on the heart, and he says he doesn't even follow chakras. He says it's all, I mean,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
true and all, but it's still a construct that we don't need to follow
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of takes away from your infinite source oneness potential. And I've always said, well, if you can dissolve your chakras into one and make that one the heart, and always go with that and not be bored, more power to you. But I kind of think you're missing on the spice of life that is variety. I mean, what
Yeah.
fun is it to not use your third eye often? Well,
Right.
it's not, well, one thing, and not just using the third eye, and not just using your head, your brain instead of the heart, just for variety's sake, but one thing I'm interested in doing, you mentioned earlier, we have the ability to heal ourselves rather than going to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's imagine someone um, knows that they're gonna that you would never know this, but let's say you know that you're gonna suffer massive strokes. You're basically going to be brain dead, but is it possible? Because they say there's also a brain in the heart of sorts. Is it possible? And I'm sure it is, but how do we do it is my question to you. If we wanted to transfer all of the abilities that the brain in our noggins can do, everything that it can do, and transfer all of that to our heart. So if you knew, oh my God, I'm about to get a stroke and I'm going to lose all my brain's ability, I need to find a way to transfer everything to my heart so I can, the thing in my noggin will be dead, but I'm not going to lose any abilities at all because I will have transferred all the information and all the abilities from that to my heart essence. So everything that my brain and my noggin did now can do in my heart, in my chest heart. How do if we could find a way to do that, that would be a huge step to causing people to not lose abilities and be able to continue full potential. And how do we? Do you have any advice on how one could transfer everything in the brain in their head to the brain in their heart, if that's an appropriate term, brain in the heart,
Yeah.
to be able to do that if hypothetically you knew you're going to get a zillion strokes and you're not going to be able to use the brain in your head anymore?
Um, Kind of back to the chakra thing, the flavor of life that comes with it. The way that the body is designed, the human body, I mean, is designed is to have both mechanisms going together. So when you look at heart math, they say that there are neurons in the heart. I think it's like 50 trillion neurons in the heart, and that there's 20 trillion neurons in the gut, and then our brain is just astronomical. But so there are neurological connections inside of the heart, but I don't think it has the capacity to do what you're talking about. Um, what I would say transcending the body, yes, but I don't know about moving the brain, all the brain functions into the heart. So I think as a human, the human itself needs um, both. For me personally, I mean, I've never seen it done or even thought about that. To tell you the truth, so I wouldn't say it's not possible because I think anything is possible, but I wouldn't. I think I feel that both are needed.
Very reasonable enough. So where can we close up here? We're almost done the interview, and well, actually, it's 9:01 now, so I guess I might as well end it now. But give you the chance to get out anything you like, give out your websites, your contact info, maybe some future events you're planning to speak to, and whatnot, and close us out. And then I'll close it
Yeah.
out after you.
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me at jlayton.com. I'm also starting a new project called Activation Healing. I have a nonprofit. It's called the Masters Octave. You can find that at themastersoctave.org. And what we're going to be doing there is I'm going to be allowing people to use my services on a donation-based um, platform. Because I feel that I'm here to serve humanity, and people shouldn't be walking around feeling pain because they can't afford it. And most people who are sick um, don't have the support in the financial avenues that people who are not sick. So I wanted to open up my services to people who could use it and not be held back by their financial situation, because I think every human being, I believe that we're all one and we're all here to serve each other. So I'm going to be starting that activation healing in December, and you can find out more information on that on themastersoctave.org, and I'll have some information on jlayton.com. And I'll be doing be part of the Waves of Light conference in Sarasota, Florida, in January 16th through the 19th. Pretty excited about that. Should be a good one.
Wait a minute, were you on the Waves of Light cruise?
I was.
Oh, that's where I met you. Oh,
Was it?
shit. Yeah, the Waves of Light cruise in that went to Mexico, Cozumel. Yes, that.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know, remember you off the top of my head, but that must have been where I saw you, considering that's
That's funny.
okay. So
Yeah,
I'm
so
actually.
I closed that with the presentation of a piece of the course of which one did I do? I did the why things are the way they are today in the Ascension.
Cool. I
So
won't be able to be
yeah,
at the Waves of Light conference in January. A little too much on my pocketbook at the moment. I'm really trying to close off all debts and save some money. We're still in the year of the
yeah.
Earth Pig, and the Earth Pig, Chinese zodiac speaking, is said to be one of the best years for saving money. So I'm going to try to stick with that and cut back on my conferences in the near future for a little bit until the February or anyway. So that being said, it was great having you on. I always seem to promise my guests at the end of the shows that I'll have the show uploaded by midnight tomorrow, is what I always say, but that apparently is probably not going to be the case. Try to upload it to a format tonight, but I'm going to be going to bed very, very soon, probably soon, even before it's uploaded to the YouTube compatible format, because I got to get up early to catch my ride to California for the conference. So I feel sorry for Neil Gore, who runs Portal to Ascension. It's the same weekend this weekend as his conference is, as Alien Con in Dallas. That's like David versus Goliath when it comes to conferences, with his being the David conference and Alien Con being Goliath. But I've been to Alien Con a little bit too much. Want to take a break from that. Great conference. I definitely recommend people go to it anyway. So so is Portal to Ascension. Definitely worth it. So anyhow, great having you on. I will. I'm sure I'll see you in the future at some point. This was a great interview. Namaste. Enjoy the rest of your track that infinite consciousness, and good luck.
You as well, my friend. Thank you.